Hello there, welcome back to the channel. This is Nerdworld Empire, and today, finally, the Dominion. Final episode in the current series that I'm undertaking, revolving around that unholy alliance of an empire. Before we get started, please like, share, subscribe, comment down below, share this video around if you're enjoying it, and bear in mind, up until this point, I probably will create more Dominion videos in the future, but there is currently a full playlist explaining the Dominion, its assets, its member states, how it was formed, what the different races do within that entity, etc, etc. That playlist should be linked somewhere. And with that said, this episode is about how the Dominion was, in and of itself, as an entity, a dark reflection of the United Federation of Planets. Now, I've explored this topic in other videos, so please go back and check those out for a little bit of context. This video is going to be basically how, why, what the, and that kind of stuff. And mostly speculation, and feel free to put your thoughts in the comments down below. The Dominion, although far older than the Federation, was similar to it in almost every way. The two organizations were basically superficially very similar, which would explain to a degree why the Federation might have thought in the early days of contact with the Dominion it might have been able to hash out a peace with this entity, come to some mutual understanding. Unfortunately, that was not going to happen. Although similar in every way, similar to a Romulan and a Vulcan, although similar, there are subtle differences, but there are a lot of them. Those differences manifest in different ways, but we'll start at the beginning. The Federation, similar to the Dominion, was formed in violence, and was. The Federation coalesced due to the Romulans basically not wanting an alliance of races to interfere with their plans for the Vulcans and their future expansionistic goals. That's another story in and of itself, but basically the Romulans tried to militarily disrupt any form of alliance in the Alpha Quadrant, preventing the races from coming together. What it actually did was give them a common enemy and put Andorians and Vulcans, Tellarites and humans on the same side against the Romulans. And this baptism of fire is what would actually lead to the formation of the United Federation of Planets. And despite its protestations to the contrary, Starfleet and the Federation would have strong military influences and, as Quark would put it, was an insidious organization. It didn't conquer you. It didn't invade your space. It didn't tell you what to do, it just made you want to be like them. They gave you the trappings of civilization. Better food, exposure, knowledge. They gave you resources, they gave you new technology. And in exchange, all they asked for was your friendship. But your friendship came at a cost of your own culture, despite the recognition of it. If you're in Starfleet, Starfleet ships are rarely named after a Andorian figure. There's not many starships called the USS Kumari. You do get the odd ship named something like the USS Saval or the USS Spock or something like that, but often in case these are people close to Starfleet and Earth. Starfleet is principally a human organization, similar to how the Jem'Hadar and the Dominion forces are those of the Founders. Earth and humanity is the glue that brought the Federation together. They are its founders, its changelings. Humans adapt themselves to communicate better with other races, while the Founders literally adapt themselves to communicate better with other races. In the early stages of Founder exploration of the galaxy, before the creation of the Dominion, the Founders, like humans, wanted to go forth and peacefully coexist with other races, but like humans, found that this was not really going to be an option. Other races would fight them, they'd go to war with them, they'd persecute them, they'd hate them, whatever. But it forced them into a corner, and unlike humans who had allies and friends and resources, the changelings didn't really have anything to fall back on except their own ingenuity, and the path they chose was going to be a forcible alliance. Not a peaceful coexistence and coalition of worlds which would lead to the formation of the Federation, but a militaristic regime headed by the Founders, enforced by the Jem'Hadar and administrated by the Vorta. And I've done videos on the Vorta and the Jem'Hadar previously, explaining theories and possible explanations as to how those races became to be part of the Dominion. The Founders would decide that the best way to have peace was at the barrel of a gun. They would enforce it. If you wouldn't bow to them, you were a threat, and they would send in the Jem'Hadar. The Federation's got Starfleet, and Starfleet will resort to strong arming, putting pressure on, usually political, and again, despite their benevolent reputation, Starfleet wasn't against pulling a phaser from time to time. But although sometimes the tactics of the Dominion and the Federation in that regard would overlap, the Starfleet and the Federation would always pull their punches. They wouldn't go as far as to, for example, use a trilithium missile to destroy a star just to wipe out one enemy. The Dominion would. They wouldn't use biogenetic weapons because they're considered immoral. They won't use weapons of mass destruction, at least not 24th century version weapons of mass destruction, because again, they consider them to be immoral and wrong, but not unless they absolutely have to use such things. Starfleet and the Federation has the technology to produce some of these devastating weapons, but simply won't do it, even though it has the know-how, the technical capabilities. We often see this when Starfleet encounters other races who are utilizing a technology or a weapon. Starfleet thinks, no, that's wrong, you can't do that. But it's like, but how do you know how to make it? How do you know how to disable it? Starfleet engineers will often go, well, yeah, well, it works by doing X, Y, and Z to create this cascade and reverse polarity of the thing and blow the shit up. But how do they know? Are they just doing theoretical thought processes, or has Starfleet actually experimented with this kind of technology? We know that organizations like Section 31 exist, so probably the Federation is dabbling with things it shouldn't. But all things considered, including biogenetic weapons, because let's not forget that Section 31 are the closest organization to ever come to actually destroying the changelings. The Tal Shiar and the Obsidian Order tried and failed because they tried a direct assault. The Federation's insidious nature, Section 31, and expansion of that, came very, very close. But, again, the two organizations, although use similar tactics, the Federation does pull its punches, whereas the Dominion will openly use biogenetic weapons, openly use weapons of mass destruction, openly genocide a population, do these brutal tactics just to maintain control and order. The Federation believes in freedom as well as order and tries to walk a balance between the two, never falling into dictatorship but trying to steer clear of anarchy in the same time. Because it's the best system, maybe not perfect, but it's a better system than one extreme or the other. Another way the two organizations are fairly similar is in their structure. Although there is definitely a hierarchical system within the Federation, with certain races seeming, at least perceptually, to hold a more important role, with, let's say, the Vulcans being the Federation's Vorta, for example. Humans would probably come close to being its founders, and the Andorians maybe being the Jem'Hadar, along with probably humans as well. That's a very, very broad brushstroking of it, especially in the early days of the Federation, but that's what an outsider might have seen. And it's reasonable to conclude that in some ways, in its early days, that's how the Federation operated. But in later years, it would morph and evolve and believe in this thing called equality. Not something the Dominion approves of, but the way the two organizations are structured, the goal is to create an efficient system. Starfleet brings together all these different races into one pot and then mixes them together, shakes them up, and tries to create a unified organization with different races often filling different roles, even encouraging certain species to take on certain jobs within Starfleet because they're considered to be more effective at it and less effective at others. This is stated in dialogue in certain episodes, particularly of Voyager. The Dominion, however, just cuts that bit out and goes, no, Karama, you're traitors. Jem'Hadar, you're fighters. Vorta, you're idiots and you're diplomats. And we're in charge of everything. The Federation is not that cut and dry, it's not that black and white, but certainly has shades of it. Certain races filling niches, certain races filling certain roles. Humans are probably one of the most diverse, whereas you go to any Vulcan world, they look pretty much the same, they act the same, the buildings are the same. Humans have colonies that are far more independent, some colonies like the Maquis and even a few others, which have gone fully independent of the Federation, because the Federation fully believes in the right of self-determination. And as long as there's a society there that can sustain itself, then by all means go right ahead. Sometimes giving up on planets such as Tal Shiar's original homeworld, Starfleet and the Federation pretty much gave up on that world and stopped bothering to go there, only calling in from time to time to basically see if they'd all killed each other yet. So, the takeaway from that is the two organizations are fairly similar superficially in that they both organize and structure themselves in a fairly similar way, but they still believe in the core value of they're trying to create order, but they do it in a different way. They've taken a different path to the same destination, one taking a more right-wing militaristic path, and the other one, arguably, and of different debate, whether or not Starfleet and the Federation really are space socialists, taking a more left-leaning approach to building a peaceful empire. And the Federation is an empire. And the reason I say that is possibly a controversial one, but any organization that imposes its will on another organization or race or group is an empire. Pure and simple. It is an act of violence to impose your opinion on others. In order to be part of the Federation, and yes, there are plenty of arguments to say, which is why it's a controversial one, I don't fully agree even with my own opinion here, that the Federation is a good organization. You're going to want for nothing. You're going to have resources, replicators, medicine, food, everything you ever want. You can join in with Starfleet, you can build your own fleet, whatever. The Federation will support you, as long as you support others, and the same goals. Every individual amongst your society is allowed this. But if your historic culture is one of, you had a monarchy, Starfleet's less inclined, and the Federation, should I say, is less inclined to be tolerant of that. So it is, in a way, an act of violence. In order to be part of this great benevolent entity, you can't be like the Klingons. You can't love war. You can't love violence. You can't want to conquer and murder your way across the galaxy. That's wrong. And it is wrong. That's the worst part. It is technically wrong. But the fact remains, they exclude these organizations and races because they can't be part of this future, this world that they are building, this civilization. You have to conform to its laws, its rules. And let's face it, a lot of those are based on human cultural norms, human concepts of cooperation and civilization imposed on others. You want to be part of this? You have to pass a series of tests. You have to qualify. And if you don't, you have to change. They won't force you. It's still a voluntary process. So, fine. But again, Quark puts it, it's insidious. They want you. They'll lay all the breadcrumbs that take you down the pathway to becoming more like them, not like yourself. But in that way, the Dominion and the Federation are quite similar. The only difference, again, is the Dominion is a little more direct. In terms of how they integrate these races and exploit the various resources they have, the Federation is always looking for technological solutions to all problems. More efficient mining systems, better medicine, better propulsion. Everything that a race has when it joins the Federation becomes part of the Federation. Starfleet is so advanced not because humanity is such great engineers, and they are in the context of the show, and they're living in a technological golden age. It's because they're exposed to all the science and technology which has been done by others. Vulcans, bear in mind, are far older. When humans are shown in the 22nd century, their technology is vastly inferior to that of the Vulcans and others, but yet we see by the 24th century Vulcan ships and Andorian ships, they're nothing compared to Starfleet. Starfleet's weaker ships are still on a par with the stronger vessels of the Vulcans. The reason for this is humanity and Starfleet is cherry-picked. They take the best bits that everyone's got to offer, integrate them into their own, and keep expanding. And every time a new race joins, if it's advanced enough and has anything that they want, they get it. So Starfleet has the best of both worlds, or the best of 260 plus worlds, and their colonies, and all the great minds of the trillions of people that make up the United Federation of Planets. The Dominion in this regard is exactly the same. Anything that anybody has that they can use, they will have. For example, when the Breen joined the Dominion, although they did turn out to be a little bit of a one-trick pony, the Breen brought to the table certain technologies that were very useful. Notably, the energy dampening weapon. They were able to use it to great effect to defeat many of the Allied ships and forces during the war. Very, very well, I should point out. This was the same, we can assume, for any race the Dominion encountered. If the species themselves are useful, attributes will be taken. I have a theory, personally, that the Jem'Hadar shrouding ability probably comes from whatever race they're engineered from, possibly the Tosk. I've explored that theory a little bit more in my Jem'Hadar video, but basically, the Dominion's going as far as literally, if my theory is correct, when it encounters a new race, if the Jem'Hadar aren't related to the Tosk in any way, the Dominion found something biologically another race had and thought that's a good idea, and they literally adapt the Jem'Hadar to have it. They're going as far to adapt their own people with biological upgrades, not to mention their technology with technological upgrades, giving the Dominion vast resources and a very unscrupulous utilization of their power. But it's not too dissimilar to how Starfleet is. Basically, to sum this up, the two organizations are a mirror image of one another. One a dark reflection, yes, one perhaps a light reflection. Both have good points and elements, and that's, I know it can be sort of damning to say that an organization like the Dominion could have anything positive going on. And I'm not going to say that life in the Dominion will be good, but it never seems to be that bad, all things considered. It could be worse. The Dominion, it is probably wrong to say, has never done anything good for anyone. They probably have done some good in the galaxy. Maybe they saved the world from the Borg. Maybe they stopped a plague here and there. If they never do anything positive, they would be facing endless additional problems. Keeping the races you've conquered a little sweet wouldn't go too far towards making stability and peace a little bit more tolerable and easy. Starfleet is equal to this. It will withhold technology and life-saving and beneficial things from those that aren't part of it. If you want them, you've got to become part of us. It's, again, insidious. That's pretty much tantamount to blackmail. Starfleet and the Federation is a mirror of the Dominion. In a lot of ways, the way they're structured, the way they're organized, the way they're administrated, the way they're run, are all very similar. It's merely the execution of the policies that makes them different. And this, out of universe, was always meant to have been the point of the Dominion. It was meant to be the Federation on steroids, the Federation on drugs. That's what the Dominion is, or the other way round, the Federation is the Dominion light. In a lot of ways, they're similar, but never exactly the same, and their execution of everything is a little different, but ultimately similar. With all that out of the way, what form do you think the Dominion has taken after the war? This is one topic I was debating taking on in this series, but I decided against it. What's the 25th century Dominion like? Do they still exist, or did Odo's return to the Great Link have a rippling effect, pun intended, on the Dominion and actually reshape it, modify it, or did power corrupt Odo and he's just another changeling now? Let me know, comment below where you stand on all these topics, and we're at the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and bye-bye. I'd just like to say a thank you to everyone for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoy making these. If you did enjoy it, please consider giving a like, share, and a subscribe, and maybe checking out the other videos on the screen right now, and in the description box below there are links to my other social media accounts.